Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Can you handle the beast? That is the question I'll be asking over the course of this review. You're the only person that can answer that question though. This is a Citizen ProMaster Aqualand and I, hand on heart, think it is one of the most fabulous watches that I have reviewed on the channel over the last 5 years. It is just such a beast. It is a unit, it is big, it is thick, it is chunky, and it is so suitable for its purpose. This is a proper diver's watch, divers with an apostrophe, and it is perfectly designed for that purpose. Now there are a bunch of YouTube reviews elsewhere already on this watch, but nobody has tested the depth gauge. This watch has a depth gauge so you know exactly how deep in the water you are going. Nobody's tested it until now, that is. Yes, that's right, I've got the old pump out today, my water pressure tester that I bought at the beginning of last year. When I tested a bunch of cheap Chinese watches, everybody said, Jody, you're not using it properly, because I wasn't using it properly. And today, I'm still not using it properly, but I'm using it perfectly well to test the depth gauge on this Citizen. The results are quite incredible for a budget watch. Make sure you stick around for those. And when I say budget watch, I mean budget watch. You can pick one of these up all day long for less than $550 US on eBay. I'll leave a link in the description of the video. $799 AUD equivalent, and that's not a sale price. Again, those are available readily at that tag. Now, I didn't just pay either of those prices for this one. It is another watch that is kindly on loan to the channel by Adam over in Melbourne, aka Blue Moose Racing on Instagram. Adam, you're a legend, mate. He has loaned me so many watches, including the Starmansky most recently from a couple of weeks ago. He has an amazing collection. I love this thing. It's a beast. Let's flip the camera and have a look at it. So why do I think this ProMaster Aqualand is fabulous then? Well, it starts here, to be honest. $550 US, you're getting a big brand Japanese watch. And if you buy it from an authorized dealer, you're getting a 5-year warranty with that. Now, I have looked at a couple of Tudors on the channel recently. One was about $4,500, the other one was about $16,500. They had 5-year warranties, which rather puts that into context. You also get this fantastic ProMaster packaging. Citizen do not have to do this, but the fact that they do this shows that they, unlike certain other Japanese big brands that I could mention, still actually care about their customers. And tell me, how could you not love something that looks like that? There is something slightly ridiculous about it, but as I said, it is just so purposeful that I think it gets away with it nicely, and it is a beast. Now, at its narrowest point, if I measure it across the diagonal, it comes in at 48 mil. If you measure it across the middle, including the crown and the depth gauge over there, it comes in at 52 mil. 15 mil thick, but lug to lug is only 50.5. Now, I've got a 7-inch wrist. You'll see it on my wrist in a couple of minutes. It's actually reasonably wearable. 22 mil lug width, and on the supplied polyurethane rubber strap, this one weighs in at 155 grams on a rubber strap. What a beast. So all brushed stainless steel case. We have a stainless steel crown, but it has been DLC coated. It is nicely nerved, nicely grippy, despite the considerable crown guards, and it has the ProMaster logo there. Now we have stainless steel pushers, but they also have DLC coated stainless steel screw down mechanisms on both there. Now the bezel is interesting. They're referring to this one as a 3-piece bezel, again stainless steel, again DLC coated, but there is a separate piece at the bottom. You can see it here. That's what the depth meter writing is on. It's an aluminium ring. Now the insert itself, I can't work out whether that is aluminium or ceramic. It kind of looks like aluminium with a slightly mottled effect, but at the same time it kind of looks like ceramic. Anyway, it all really goes well together, and that bezel is massively grippy. 120 click, unidirectional, feels good, and everything lines up perfectly. Perhaps the bezel isn't quite as beastly as the rest of the watch, but it's okay. What about the flip side then? At first glance, you might take that to be a helium escape valve. It's actually a water sensor. This watch automatically knows when you start diving and switches the watch into dive mode. Pretty amazing, I think, for the cash that they're asking for this one. That is the pressure sensor. Don't worry, I'll show you how all of this works in practice in a couple of minutes. So what does this all do then? Well, there are 3 main modes here: timekeeping mode, chronograph mode, and dive mode. Like I said, the watch automatically switches itself
itself into dive mode when it gets wet. Always the hour hand, always the minute hand, always the date, always a ticking small second hand down there, and always a 24-hour register slave to the hour hand. That is a chrono timer up there at the register at 12 o'clock. This, which you initially think is the second hand and then you think it's the chrono hand, well, it is the chrono hand. They call it the function hand. When it's in timekeeping mode, it just displays the charge of the Eco Drive movement. Here we're at level 1. Level 1 means it's still functional. Level 2 means it's fully charged. NG, the manual doesn't say what it is. No good, no go. It's certainly not a positive if it is pointing at NG. Now, Eco Drive B740 movement in here, 6 months when fully charged. The watch does various things to let you know that it is running out of charge. It will tick every 2 seconds here on the small second display at 6. If it's really getting low, the function hand will point to 0 and it will tick every 2 seconds there. Also, it will not enter dive mode. It will not let you enter dive mode if it doesn't have enough charge to get you through a dive. I think that is a really, really nice touch. So chronograph mode is engaged by pressing the B button down for a couple of seconds, and you'll see that function hand there, the red hand. It goes all the way around and all the way around and all the way around because the register at 12 there is resetting to 0 and it will stop. Thereafter it is pretty straightforward. One push of the top pusher to start it. It ticks twice per second, you can see there, so you're only really measuring down to the second. Once again to stop, and then push of the bottom pusher to reset. Now, unfortunately, it is a bit of a slow reset. If you have counted up to 20 minutes, say this one measures up to a maximum of 50 minutes, it will then slowly wind back each and every one of those 20 minutes before resetting back to where it is in the timekeeping mode, giving a power display there, and that is DV on the 12 o'clock register. So definitely not a racing chrono here. You're not going to be timing anything all that quickly with this one. That's not really the point. But what about dive mode then? Let's get out the pressure tester. Now please forgive my dubious camera work here, and please forgive my dubious equipment. This is not beyond the press. No expense spared though. I used my best dental floss to hold that Citizen in position on the right. Now I don't know how accurate my pressure tester is. It was a cheap eBay purchase job. I think I paid about $150 for it. But there's a reasonable correlation between what that gauge says on the left and what the watch says on the right. There's always a slight delay. The watch takes maybe a split second just to catch up with itself once it adjusts to its new environmental pressure situation, and it tends to register about 1 meter below where that gauge suggests it should register. But overall, I'm really impressed with this Citizen. It was responsive and it was accurate all the way up to 40 and then beyond to 50. Now when I got to 50, I gave it a little bit of an extra crank to compensate for that slight disparity between the two. I didn't go over 50 though. The watch, once it goes over 50, it just flicks onto that next mode in the blue there. And it was the same on the way down. I released the pressure in a couple of bursts. The watch always lagged slightly behind, and there was always a 1 meter discrepancy between the two. But overall, very impressed with the accuracy of this one considering the price tag of the watch. Fantastic, a budget diver's watch with a depth gauge that, depending on the accuracy of my water pressure tester, of course, looks pretty much spot on in terms of its accuracy. And as an added bonus, once you're back in the regular timekeeping mode, the watch switches itself back into timekeeping mode when it senses that it's out of water. By the way, if you hold down the A button, it will tell you how deep your last dive was, all the way up to 50 meters, because as you saw, I tested it up to 50 meters. Pretty amazing, I think, for the cash. What else can I tell you? Flat sapphire crystal, ISO rated at 200 meters, and I always really like these Citizen casebacks, the one that say "Do not open!" service center repair only. This is pretty much a set and forget. Accuracy of plus or minus 15 seconds per month, so you're going to have to adjust it every couple of months, but you should honestly not have to crack that case back for a decade or more. Again, pretty fantastic considering the watch is under 600 bucks. So we've now seen what it does, we've seen how it functions. Let's take it outside, get it under the macro lens and have a look at these elegant aesthetics then. Yeah, okay, perhaps not the most elegant watch in the world, but definitely functional. Love those big Arabics on the bezel, the 10, 20, 30, 40, giant Lume Lume triangle up there as well. Very easy to read that depth gauge from 0 all the way around to 50, and then that blue zone. By the way, if you go over 50 meters, it points to that black dot, the first thing in that blue zone there between 50 and 60. The indices are applied with silver surrounds. There's some Lume on there. I'll show you in a minute or two. The date is fairly legible considering it isn't the biggest date in the world. They haven't over-branded it. Just 3 lines next to the date window: Citizen, Eco Drive, and then that Divers 200 meters, the ISO certification. They've stuck the ProMaster logo down there at the 7 o'clock. Could probably have done without that, to be honest. Now, interestingly, they haven't put any Arabics on the small second register at the 6 o'clock there. I do like the crosshairs in the middle though in white, and that little silver surround with plenty of hash marks, but Arabics might have been easy to read, assuming of course that hadn't over-cluttered it. The 24-hour indicator at the 9 o'clock is a little bit meh, but at least it kind of balances the dial out. Now the hands, I'll show you at this angle because it doesn't show up from some of the other shots. The hour hand is cathedral style. It is segmented with that little teat on the end there. They are big hands. I do like the colours though. Red for the minute hand, red for that function hand, white for the hour hand, white for the 3 sub-registers. Overall, black, white, red, blue, nice mix of colours. You know, it's not going to win any beauty competitions, but it is all very functional. As is the Lume. Now, I have an episode of Lume Wars coming up, and it's looking really, really good actually. Some big Swiss brands, some cracking micros, and a couple of Japanese big hitters as well. The Citizen stands a good chance of doing rather well, I think. Those big hands means there's plenty of Lume on the hour hand and the minute hand, and applied indices means there's plenty on the hour markers as well. Now when we get to the end of the 20 minutes, you can see the application of the Lume is a little bit patchy. It's not as consistent, especially on those hands, as I think it should be, but it's still pretty legible, isn't it? On wrist, I mean, look, I'm not going to lie to you, it's enormous, but it's actually all right. It's one of these watches, reminds me of the Seiko Arnie. You think it's just not going to work, but then you put it on and it actually does. And do you know why it does? Well, you probably do. 50.5 lug to lug. You can make a watch as big as you like, as long as you keep the lug to lug relatively compact. Chances are most people can get away with it. I've got a 7-inch wrist, no problem at all on me if I choose to wear a watch like this. I know Adam has a slightly smaller wrist than I do. He wears it no problems at all as well. ProMaster logo here, it's a nice rubber strap actually. Nice chunky buckle, but it isn't ridiculous. It's relatively discreet, but certainly as purposeful as the rest of the watch. And ProMaster embossed on the other end of the rubber strap as well. There's the overhead shot for some perspective as well. I'm actually going to include 2 pocket shots today. One close up, one a little bit further out, because yeah, you do need to see the scale of this thing to see if it's something you want to take on yourself or not. Outside natural light, you're going to get a sneak preview of one of my Moans and Niggles. Flat sapphire, not enough, if any, anti-reflective undercoating. You do get some bounce back at points. I do like that bezel though, the whole thing, the 3 different tones, the 3 different materials, 3 different layers, all really work very well. And on wrist, again, that compact lug to lug, it's only 15mm thick. I have reviewed a bunch of watches that don't do anything like what this one does, that have been thicker than that, so I don't think the thickness is going to be an issue at all. And as promised, 2 pocket shots to finish. The one close up, you don't really get an idea of just how big this watch is, just how imposing it is on wrist. When I pull back a little bit further, I'm a big tall guy, this is still a big watch. On to the Moans and Niggles section, and yeah, this thing is a unit. Nobody is going to say that this slips neatly under a cuff, because it does not slip neatly under a cuff. I can't imagine too many people rocking up to the office on a Monday morning wearing one of these. That's not really the point. It's for diving, it's for kind of casual and sports use. You'd certainly make a statement wearing this one with jeans and a t-shirt, but yeah, that's probably its upper limits. As mentioned, flat sapphire, lack of anti-reflective undercoating means it's not the most legible in certain light conditions at certain angles. I guess you don't get everything for $550. And it's a big watch with a small dial and hands. You know, big chunky case, huge bezel, fairly substantial angle chapter ring leads to a slightly small dial and handset. But the hands themselves are so big that they do obscure each of those 3 registers in turn as they rotate around the dial. And then of course there's that slightly moot point about how many people are actually going to take this one diving anyway. I'm not a diver, but I hear that real divers use dive computers, ideally one on each wrist. Perhaps then this is the second wrist. You have a dive computer on one wrist and one of these on the other. Both of them verifying, cross-checking and backing each other up. So then, can you handle the beast? Regardless of whether you're actually going to be taking this one to 50 meters at the weekends, I still think it's pretty fabulous. Let me just reiterate, big brand Japanese watch, 5-year warranty, eco drive movement, 6 months battery life from a single charge. Pretty much sealed case back. I reckon a conservative estimate you're not going to have to deal with any service or maintenance costs for this one for 10 years minimum. Sapphire crystal, ISO rated, incredibly solid feeling unit overall. 50-minute chronograph function, date, 12-24-hour indicator and a depth meter for goodness sakes. Probably the next watch beyond this to feature a depth meter is an Oris Aquis that comes in at about 4.5 grand, 8 times the cost of this one. Perhaps not the world's most attractive watch, but sometimes there is beauty within the beast. So there you have it, the Citizen ProMaster Aqualand. What an absolute unit. Where do you go from here? Well, if you're looking for something economically viable that has just as much wrist presence as this one, almost, why not check out the Seiko Arnie? That's probably the closest you're going to get for the cash. If you want a watch that's just as much of a beast as this one, I'm afraid it's got to be the Rolex Deep Sea Sea Dweller. Thanks for watching. See you again soon.